Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to High Frontier for All, Game 3, Race for Glory. This is Part 2. We're going to start in Year 4 of the Sunspot cycle, and this is the first cycle, so this is turn number 4. To recap, the Taikonauts have 2 cards and 1 aqua. Where did it go? 1 aqua for auctions. NASA has 4 cards and no aqua. And the ESA has 2 cards and 7 aqua. Just FYI, I learned about this game back in 2018. It was started to be created back in 2020. But in 2018, I saw this and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to get this. And it took 6 years, but I finally got it here. And we're basically going through from the beginning of the introductory. Those videos are in the live section. And now we're past the super easy beginning, and we are expanded now into a lot of the more core features. And so we're gonna continue this race for glory onto Mars. So this could go probably a little bit quicker. We'll see how many turns that we can get through here in an hour on this video. But we're going to start it off with the Taikonauts, and the Taikonauts need a refinery. So what they're going to do is they're going to put this refinery up for auction. This refinery right here, the chlorination, it has 3 mass. So we're going to put that up for auction. They're going to go ahead and bid 0. The ESA also wants a refinery. They only have a thruster and a robonaut, so they're going to go ahead and bid 1. The Taikonauts also bid 1, and the ESA bids 2, and the Taikonauts say you can take it. So the ESA gets their refinery, and they pay 2 aqua over to the Taikonauts. All right. So everybody's pretty much happy there. Taikonauts got 2 aqua, and that brings them to 3. You can see over there, they got 3 right over there. And the ESA is happy because now they have a full rocket stack. So they are on their way pretty quickly because they already have some aqua there used to boost the rocket up into LEO. And so they're sitting pretty good right now. All right, so on to NASA. NASA has a full rocket stack, but they're not able to put up any auction or anything like that because they don't have any money. So they're going to need to do. They also aren't able to take any cards because they have 4 in their hand. So what they're going to do is, and they can't boost into orbit because they don't have any aqua. So they're pretty much left with one thing. So you can do they can do an income operation and get 1 aqua, or they can do a free market operation and sell one of their cards for 3 aqua. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to free market operation, which is sell this card here, this thruster. They want to keep their 5-1. They get rid of their 5-4, and they sell it for 3. And that goes to the bottom of the stack. Bottom of the draw. You can see that thruster right there is a 0 mass thruster, but 3 base thrust with 4 steps of fuel for each burn. Not very efficient, but it's also a solar powered. Interesting. So it gets the solar modifier as well. if you recall the solar modifier from the first game, in the Earth zone, it's 0. In Venus, it's +1 to thrust. In Mercury, it's +2. In Mars, it's -1. And then further you go out, it's more minus. So really, you only want to use a solar sail in the very inner solar system. All right. So NASA is going to receive 3 aquas from the pool and go into their aqua pile, which is great for them because they need money to be able to boost their rocket up into low Earth orbit. All right. So the ESA is recognizing that the taikonauts still need a refinery, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to look at this refinery right here, and it is a CVO molding refinery, and they're going to put that up for auction in hopes that the taikonauts give them back their money that they just got this last round from them. So if in fact nobody does bid on it, then the ESA could just sell it for 3, just like NASA did when they took their that thruster for free. So, however, the taikonauts are smart. They see what's up. They see what's going on. And the next one that's coming up is a refinery, but it's 4. So refineries range from 2 to 5, and the figures that 2 aqua for this would be pretty good. So at this point, the taikonauts go to bid 1, and the ESA bids 1 as well, and then the taikonauts bid 2, and the ESA says, fine, you can have it. So now the taikonauts have all 3 cards for their rocket, and they're going to give 2 aqua back to the ESA. The ESA is very happy because they want as much aqua as they can in order to boost their rocket up to LEO. So each player now has their patents in order to build a rocket, but there isn't much cash around. However, the ESA does appear to have the strongest position with the most funds and a pretty good set of patents. The situation at this point is the CRP has 2 aqua. The taikonauts have 2 aqua. I refer to them as the CRP. I think that's what they used to be called. They are the taikonauts, and their little insignia up there, I don't think it's gonna focus right in there. Well, anyway, I'll tell you, it's super small, and it reads CNSA. Not exactly sure what that stands for, but I'll call them the taikonauts. So the taikonauts have 2 aqua. They have 3 cards. They have a crew in the LEO, and they have and that's that's pretty much it. So the NASA has 3 aqua. They have 3 cards. Their crew is in LEO as well. And the ESA has 7 aqua and 3 cards and a crew in LEO as well. All right. So now that we've gone through that, we're going to go to year number 5. There we are. And the taikonauts are going to start this year off. all three players obviously uh, realize that they have to, build the rocket and then get it up to low Earth orbit. The boost operation moves patents from your hand to the low Earth orbit slot on the playmat. So, but you need to boost the components for your rocket into the LEO stack before you can actually assemble them into a rocket. So, boosting, and if you aren't familiar with current approaches to space flight, you might wonder why you need to boost technologies to low Earth orbit to construct a rocket. Why not just launch a fully fueled and assembled rocket from Earth? Well, for missions beyond Earth's immediate environment, for example, beyond the moon, space assembly allows for larger systems to be constructed, systems that are simply too big to be launched by a single rocket from Earth. NASA's Space Launch System, the SLS, and the Starship from SpaceX are expected to lift about 45 tons to the moon, about the mass of a single high frontier fuel tank. So, interplanetary rockets are much more massive and will require multiple launches assembled in LEO. So, the weight of these things are enormous on Earth because of the gravity, and the mass are pretty big as well. The propellant in this game is factored at one of those propellants, one aqua basically, is a huge amount of mass and weight. It's 20 tons. So we're talking an extreme amount of weight going on up there. So yes, it is. It's very imperative that these components are basically shipped up one at a time, or all at a time if you can, and then assembled up there, and then from there provide thrust in order to move the entire structure somewhere out beyond. So before you can do that, though, you need to boost it, and then boosting requires one aqua for each unit of mass that you boost to LEO. And all three players know that they have to do that. So really, the key is getting a bunch of aqua. And as we stated before, the ESA has a kind of a leg up there because they have 7. NASA only has 3. The Taikonauts have 1 on their LEO already, and then 1 on their aqua pool. So there's definitely they need more cash. So very, very easily done. You basically get some cards and then you auction them off, and then you do a free market operation and sell them off. So the CRP, I said it again, the Taikonauts auctions the next card of the thruster deck, which is the RE Solar Moth. And basically wins it at a cost of 1. And because no one's going to bid 2 for it, because it makes no sense if they don't need it. So that they do a bid of 1 and they win it, and their only aqua basically goes back into the pool. And just like before, people don't like to give things for free if they can't help it. So you're just gonna make them honest, and they bid 0. Somebody else bids 1, because if you do bid 1 and you win it, then you can sell it and net 2. But you really don't want anybody to net 3, so they just match it at 1 and take the card. All right. NASA is going to look at this Robonaut, which has a mass of 2, and they're going to take this card and auction it. And this Robonaut is a flywheel tractor. It's a buggy, You can see by that icon right up there, it's a buggy. So they're going to auction it for $0, and nobody bids on it this time, and NASA just basically takes it for free. So now they're at their card limit. Remember, the only person who could have bid on it was the ESA, and they chose not to. Probably because their mass of 2 Robonaut was already the same mass, and it was also ISRU a value of 3. So didn't really make much sense for them to do that, although it was a buggy. But the ESA wants to get cash, and they really don't want to spend it if they don't need to, and they certainly don't want to give any money to NASA. All right, so the ESA, feeling pretty good, is going to say, you know what? Let me take a look at my cards and see what I can do here. They have a mass of 2, a mass of 3, and a mass of 3. So they actually can't boost everything because they only have 7 aqua. So what they decided to do was they decided to leave out this thruster and boost up the Robonaut and the refinery into LEO for a total of 5 aqua, because 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. So they boosted this up to LEO. They paid the 5 aqua. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 aqua go into the pool. And now they have a refinery, a Robonaut, and their crew all up in low Earth orbit. And by doing that, they're able to now put those cards up there on the playmat, and NASA has a faction privilege. We didn't go through this before. This is new. So let's take a look. Their faction privilege is written up here in the text and says launch fees 1 plus 1 aqua from the pool after any player performs a boost operation. All right, cool. So NASA actually gets 1 aqua for them boosting. I'm kind of curious now to see what the other factions have. So let's take a look and see what the ESA has as their privilege. Power stat. During any player's turn, may give +1 thrust to any spacecraft that has a push icon in their thruster triangle. It's also negotiable. So they can actually negotiate with other players to provide them with this power stat power. And if the thruster has a push, like for example, the Taikonauts thruster is a push. You can see that arrow right there. And that will give them +1 boost. NASA does not have it. The ESA actually does have it, but they chose not to push that one up. The crew does have it as well. And their reactor has it as well. I'm sorry, their Robonaut has it as well. There is no reactors in this game right now. All right. So they can use the power stat in order to give themselves an extra boost if they have a push engine, push thruster. All right, cool. So NASA gets themselves an aqua, which is great. And the ESA has boosted their stack up, which is great. Boost service is NASA's special ability. It represents its tax-funded monopoly of the Space Launch System, the SLS. All the factions, including NASA, make payments to use this service, paying in aquas. It also highlights the dual nature of aquas as both fuel and funds. So that's the reason why they have that faction ability. Excuse me. Crews are useful when it comes to establishing colonies. They can also commit felonies, and they also can win glories. But they also can protect you from felonies committed by others. They have powerful but inefficient thrusters and basic ISRU capabilities. In the full core game, they also protect against events. However, as you will learn as you get more experience with the game that it doesn't always take or make sense to take a crew on every trip. That's one of the tips that they basically say there. So I thought that was very interesting. So we basically spent 5. We gave NASA earned 1. So that is the end of year 5, and we finally have something that's components that are actually have been boosted up into LEO. Now you're probably wondering, well, why haven't you put the rocket out on the LEO space over there on Earth? Well, the rocket actually hasn't been built yet. Just the components are now up there in orbit, and they need to be assembled. See? So we're going to go to year number 6. And kicking us off will be the Taikonauts. And I think we probably know what the Taikonauts are going to do. The Taikonauts are actually going to, do a little selling here. So what they're going to do is they're either going to sell it or they're going to do some boosting because, well, at this point, they need to boost. So because they already have 4 cards in their hand. So I'll show you over here. There we go. All right. So they have 4 cards, and they're going to take a look and see what they can do. And they have a thruster here. Remember this thruster that they bought with 0 mass? That costs nothing to put up into low Earth orbit because it's so light that it's just a tiny little rocket thing that's going. You can see the size of the astronaut comparative to the size of this thing here. And it's, it's really not that big. So just going to go up into low Earth orbit for free. And now they have 3 cards in their hand again, so they can participate in future auctions. That's what they decided to do. Probably because it was free. And since they have no aqua, they just went ahead and boosted it up there. Since a player boosted something, guess what? That's right. NASA gets an aqua. Every time somebody boosts, NASA gets an aqua. All right. Boosting cards into LEO is a way to get around the hand limit for research auction operations if you want to keep the card rather than selling it or discarding it, right? So you just boost it up, and then your hand is 1 card less. And so you're able to do this. All right. NASA also has a full hand. They have 4 cards right in front of them there. And NASA really doesn't want to sell any. But what they decided to do is they're going to split their mission into 2 stages. First thing they're going to do is they're going to send a robonaut to Mars and the refinery and maybe the crew later. So to put the plan in motion, they're going to boost the flywheel tractor robonaut and the atomic layer deposition refinery to LEO. So we're going to look for the flywheel tractor. Here it is. And the refinery. boost those up for a total of 5, 3 plus 2. And that's all their aqua. And that is going to be up in LEO. And this is in their hand. All right. So NASA has also freed up their hand for future auctions as well. And since NASA boosted something, that's right, NASA gets an aqua. Now, the rule on that, though, is that if they only had 4 aqua, they wouldn't have been able to boost both of them. So you only take the faction. What is it called again? The faction. Hold on. Faction privilege. The privilege. Their faction privilege. You only take that after you've done the boost. See, so 5 has to get taken away, and then 1 is added back in. All right. The ESA is just about ready to build a rocket, but since their Robonaut right here is a mass of 2 and an ISU of 3, they're going to go ahead and they're going to auction off this Robonaut here, which has a mass of 1. They really like that low mass. So they're going to auction it off and they're going to say, okay, I bid 0 and no other player wants that Robonaut. So the ESA takes it for free. And now they are back to 2 cards in their hand. All right. That will be the end of year number 6. So we're going to go to year number 7. All right, we're more than halfway through the first sunspot cycle, and we're going to go on to year number 9. I'm sorry, year number 7. And year number 7 is going to put up this Robonaut here with an ISRU of 4, thinking that probably no one's going to bid on it, just so that they can take it for free and sell it. And that's exactly what they do. They take it for free, and that's in the Taikonauts. The NASA goes ahead and sells their neutral beam Robonaut because they already have the other one. This one's a really high mass one anyway. So they're going to go ahead and sell that, put that underneath here, and they're going to take 3 aqua for selling that. The ESA is going to say, okay, you know what? I am going to sell that Robonaut that they just took, and they're going to go ahead and sell that in the free market for 3 as well. So now they're up to 5. And that is the end of year 7. See how quick that went. Year 8. The Taikonauts are going to take that Robonaut that they just sold, that they just picked up, and as expected, they're going to sell it in the free market for 3. Just enough aqua. All right. So we got ourselves the Taikonauts done in year number 8, and NASA is going to take the MET steamer Robonaut, and they're going to take that for. I wonder if I turn this light on, if it would focus better. Yeah, I guess it would. It does a little bit better, but then there's a reflection. Anyway, I guess you can see it better. Okay, so they're going to take this Robonaut, and they're going to auction it for $0, and nobody else bids on it, and they take it for free. That's nice. And the ESA is going to get their rocket ready. So, as we mentioned before, in this game, spacecraft are two different kinds, rockets and sails. A rocket carries its own fuel and propellant and uses the fuel as a source of energy to throw the propellant out the back. So, courtesy of conservation of momentum in Newton's first law, body in motion stays in motion. This maneuvers the vehicle, right? So if you imagine sitting on a merry-go-round in the playground with a pile of rocks on your lap, and you throw a rock off, and you'll start to move. You see? So if you throw a rock off and you're on a stationary merry-go-round, you're going to start to move. I mean, now granted, there's friction and all kinds of other factors too, but if you're just, if the merry-go-round doesn't have a lot of friction, it's greased up really good, your energy is basically going to transfer. You threw something out, and so the energy is going to come back in, which is going to basically propel you in the opposite direction. I believe that is Newton's first law, which is the equal and opposite reaction. Is the second law the body in motion tends to stay in or will stay in motion or something? I don't know. But anyway, I think that's the Newton's first law is actually the conservation of momentum, which is there's an opposite and equal force against whatever force that you push. All right. So the food that you've eaten is your chemical fuel, providing the energy you need to toss your propellant, your rock. So, but sails don't need fuel or propellant. A typical photon sail maneuvers by balancing gravity with the pressure of the solar photons in a manner similar to the age of sail in human history. So that's why it's called a solar sail. So you see the wind pushes against that sail, which then causes motion. Same thing with the photons from the sun hits that sail and causes motion. All right. So what they're going to do is they're going to undertake a cargo transfer free action. And actually, as I read this is what they did in turn 7. So kind of rolling it back a little bit. After taking that, selling that card, they went and got their rocket ready. So they undertook a cargo transfer free action to create a rocket or outpost stack to move the Robonaut and the refinery that's currently in LEO on the ESA playmat to the rocket stack position on the playmat. So a cargo transfer free action is the basic mechanism to move cards between co-located stacks and to convert between fuel and fuel tanks. Remember, having decided not to send the crew as it remains in LEO, that's what they decided to do. So they took their crew and they left them in LEO, and they moved the refinery and the Robonaut to the rocket stack. So now they actually have a rocket. How about that? Pretty cool, huh? So this is what needs to happen here. We have to put this green rocket right onto, you guessed it, LEO. All right. So they have themselves the first rocket of the game, which is pretty cool. Now, since the rocket is there, they need to figure out what the thrust of that rocket is, what the dry mass of the rocket is, and what the wet mass of the rocket is, right? So that they can know what type of movement that they're going to be able to do. So the mass of the rocket sums the masses of the rocket component cards, and the mass of the rocket component cards are in this stack, in the rocket stack. You can see here it says rocket. This is mass 2 and mass 3. So their dry mass is a 5. So what we'll do is we'll take their chit. We'll zoom in a little bit here. See if I can get nice and tight in there without shaking it too much for you. There we go. We'll take the dry mass chit, and we're going to place that on the 5. So they have a dry mass of 5, and the wet mass chip is also a 5 because they don't have any fuel there yet. So we got the dry and the wet both on the 5, and that's where it is right now. And that's where it's going to stay. So the ESA is finally in turn number 8. They have their first rocket up there. They did not put anything, it does not say anything regarding the thrust. I don't know exactly why they didn't put anything on the thrust, but probably should have put something on the thrust. And I thought that's kind of interesting. They do say, remember that free actions can be performed as many times as you'd like during your turn, and you can even repeat the same free action multiple times. So I think that's really interesting. Another tip it says is to get your mission going early. You only have one rocket stack at a time, and getting it out to the solar system quickly puts you ahead of other players. I think that's what NASA was trying to do, but they kind of overstepped their bounds a bit and didn't have any money left. All right, so they have the rocket stack. You know what? We are going to do the thrust. So the thrust is at 5. That's the base thrust, and it's modified by the weight, and the scout is +0, so the thrust is at 5. They don't have any fuel, but they do have a rocket that can thrust at 5, and that can travel once they have fuel. All right, so turn number 8. The ESA has one card left in their hand, which was this really nice thruster, but they decided to go ahead and sell it. So they sold that pretty nice thruster there for 3, and they got 3 aqua, mainly because, well, they decided they were gonna go and take their Robonaut with that thruster and get, now they want aqua so that they can put that into their rocket for fuel propellant. All right, so they sold that one, and that is basically the end of year number 8. So we're going to go to year 9. We just moved it up over there, year 9. All right, so the Taikonauts looks at this refinery and says, I want to auction this refinery at a 4 mass. It's called the what is this one called? The fluidized bed refinery. Fluidized bed. All right, so they're going to go ahead and auction that at 0, and nobody else bids because they don't want to spend their money. So that gives them 4 cards now over there. NASA in year number 9 goes ahead and sells probably the Robonaut, I would figure. Yep. Sells that Robonaut they picked up last time. Sells it for 3 aqua. And we got to dig into our bag of aqua. The bank is paying out aqua. The market is paying out aqua for the, not really the bank, but the market's paying out aqua for those patents. All right. So that's basically what NASA did. One little footnote here is that it says that stacks of rockets can be any size. Actually, any stack can be any size. So we can have a whole bunch of cards in LEO if we want. However, in the core rule book, in the core game, there is an event that occurs called space debris. And if you have a whole bunch of stuff in space, well, it says, although it makes for good Hollywood, I believe that one movie was Gravity, where there were a couple of astronauts that were repairing something, and there was a satellite that got blown up, and then basically all the debris came and hit that and tore the space station apart. So it says, although it makes for good Hollywood, the vastness of space in LEO is routinely underestimated when evaluating the hazards of the 128 million pieces of debris smaller than 1 centimeter in diameter in LEO. So there's 128 million pieces of debris that's orbiting the Earth right now, but they're smaller than, they're less than half of an inch in diameter. The notorious Kessler syndrome, in which a big collision creates a cascade of further collisions, which is basically what was in Gravity, in a positive feedback loop, was put to the test in 2009 when the satellites Iridium 33 and Cosmos 2251 collided. A huge debris field of 2,000 Trek fragments was created, but most of this deorbited within a few years without further incidents. SpaceX wants to launch 42,000 Starlink satellites into orbit, which also won't approach the Kessler density. That's what they say, at least. All right, so now that we have finished up, the Taikonauts there, they got their and NASA, who just got their money for selling. Now the ESA is going to go ahead and they would like a little bit more fuel. They don't have any cards. So what they're just going to do is take a free market action. I'm sorry, income operation. I'll get these right. It just takes a little bit of time, but they're going to go ahead and take 1 aqua doing the income operation, just so that they have a little bit more cash and or fuel, right? All right, so we have ourselves the end of year number 9, and we're going to go to year number 10. We might get through this sunspot cycle in this video. So let's see how far we can go. We also kind of want to see that rocket go somewhere, don't we? The one over there on LEO. Go ahead and put that up there like that so you can see that rocket at all the times. All right. So here we go into year number 10. So we already kind of went through the playmat. We know what those things are. It's basically explaining what the playmat is, and we know what it's at. We already have the rocket sitting there on 5. We talked about the lines, that the red line is the when you put fuel into the rocket, you follow the dotted red line. When you do a burn, each step of fuel, you follow the black solid line. So we know that. We got that. And let's see, I'm reading here. The fuel strip's divided into a series of bands. We talked about the bands, that we have a probe that basically gives you 1 extra thrust, a scout, which gives you 0, a transport, which takes away 1 from the net thrust, and a tug, which takes away 2 from the net thrust. So the more massive your structure is, the less you can thrust it, which makes sense. So we're going to that basically is called the weight class modifier, just FYI, and it's helped to determine the net thrust. So the weight class modifier simulates the effect of Newton's second law of motion, which is F equals ma, on a rocket's acceleration. So higher mass rockets have lower acceleration for a given thrust because they have a higher mass, see? So because F force, the force is equal to mass times acceleration, and the thrust is, of course, a force. And so force is smaller. Force is smaller. Higher mass rockets have lower acceleration because if you have a given thrust and M is greater, then A has to be smaller, and A is acceleration. So it takes them longer to achieve the delta V, right? In other words, and that's how it plays out in this game, because you have all these burns that have to be done. And if you can do less burns per turn, it's going to take longer ultimately to get there, which is the acceleration, which is factored in by doing these weight class modifiers. So slower acceleration results in more time spent in a given burn space, resulting in fewer burns per turn, which is a fixed amount of time, 1 year, right? The adjustment also accounts for gravitational forces during liftoff and landing. In other words, a rocket with a thrust lower than the force of gravity, in other words, mass times acceleration is less than mass times gravity, that's never going to lift off, no matter how long the engine runs. So if your mass times the acceleration of whatever force that you're applying to it doesn't equal or isn't greater than the mass times the gravity that's pushing down on it, it's never going to go up. You can burn a rocket forever, but it won't actually ever goes. So what they say is, strictly speaking, the weight class modifier represents the impact of mass on acceleration. That's pretty much to summarize it all. All right, I think hopefully you understood that, and you can see why a more massive object will actually produce less acceleration with a given force, and the given force here in this case is the thruster. So that thruster is set at a given level. This one is set at 5. That's the base thrust. But if the mass is greater, then you're going to have less burns. So you have that weight class modifier, which lowers that thrust from 5 down to, say, 4 or even 3 if it's a tug. All right. That's a pretty important part of this game to understand. So if you didn't understand it, rewind it a little bit and go through it again. All right, so here we go. We're going to go into year number 10. Year number 10 has the Taikonauts over here with 4 cards in their hand. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to sell one of them in order to free up another slot and also to get some more cash because they only have 3 cash. So they're going to go ahead and sells the refinery that they just got, and they're going to sell that to the free market for 3 aquas. Now they'll have 1 aqua up in LEO and 6 aquas sitting in their bank. There they are, right over there. 6 aqua. Okay, cool. So that was the Taikonauts year number 10. They got some cash. NASA is going to take a look and say, oh, you know what? I like this Robonaut here. I'm going to go ahead and auction this Robonaut. And this Robonaut is called not sure if you can read that, but it is a black body pumped laser Robonaut. And they're going to go ahead and auction it for 0, and nobody bids, and they take it for free. So now they have 2 cards in their hand. All right. The ESA is going to go ahead, and they have 9 aqua sitting in their pool, in their bank, and they're going to go ahead and do another income operation in order to get to 10. And then they're going to take a free action. And the free action is basically to convert some of the aqua or all of the aqua to fuel on board her rocket using an internal tankage. Okay. So that is a free action called internal tankage. So we already have the dry mass chit and the wet mass chip on 5. And that's what basically the empty weight is at this point. So what they're going to need to do is to add enough fuel in order to get to low Mars orbit, and then use the brown dotted path through the aerobrake hazard to the Arcia Mons caves. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that looks like on Mars. There you go. You can see the little arrow braking, the brown dotted line there, and they're going to take the arrow braking all the way down onto Mars at the caves. That's what their plan is. So in other words, they need to get enough fuel in order to get there, right? They need to do the internal tankage and convert that aqua that's sitting in their bank and put that on for fuel. So we need to figure out now how much fuel is required to make this journey. All right. So let's go ahead and place this here. So we're going to place that there. And we're going to take a look and see how much fuel that we need in order to get there. All right. So on the fuel strip, we see the numbers in the white circles, right? In between each of the whole numbered mass locations, these numbers are called intervals. We're talking about these little numbers down here. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Those are intervals, okay? That shows you how many steps of fuel there are between each of those locations. So between 5 and 6, let's see what they are. Let's see what the number was there or is there. That's a 3. Okay. That makes sense because there are 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, to go from 6 to 5. So that's the interval. So what you do is you count the number of burns you need to go from where your rocket is now to where it needs to be. You don't count any burns that you go through for free, of course. You multiply the number of burns by the fuel consumption of the thruster that you're using. If you plan to do it in stages, then do this for each stage and then add up the final number. This is the required number of fuel steps that you need to use in order to make the trip. So starting at the dry mass of your rocket, you follow the intervals to the right, adding them up until you either reach or exceed the number of steps you previously calculated. If the total that you've come to is equal to your target number from the other step where you figure out how many burns it needs to be, then you have now stopped on the wet mass you need for the rocket to make the trip. If the total exceeds your target, follow the black line back to the left a number of steps equal to the distance. This will generally only be 1 step backwards unless you're dealing with a very low mass. Now you've reached the wet mass figure that you need. From there, you add the fuel tanks to get your wet mass up to the target wet mass. And each fuel tank added moves your wet mass up 1 step right along the red dotted line of the fuel strip. So, for example, let's just say that you're planning a journey that requires 5 burns, and you have a rocket that has a 5 thrust with a fuel consumption of 3. So you need to expend 5 burns times 3, so that's 3 steps per burn, which is 15 steps of fuel to where you want to go. If your rocket has a dry mass of 3, you place a dry mass chip on 3, then you follow the intervals, adding them up until you reach or just exceed your target of 15, and you end up on 9, having added the intervals until you reach the sum of 16. This is actually 1 more than you need, but you can't take half tanks. So the wet mass of that would be 16. I'm sorry, would be 9 because you have to actually go 16 steps. See? So the intervals just make it easier. A rocket must be in the same location as the fuel tanks to convert the fuel tanks to fuel. In this case, both are in LEO because our bank is in LEO. Just like the Taikonauts have their bank in LEO. So they also, this is another tip, when you begin carrying cargo such as robots and refineries, you'll be tempted to build high mass rockets to carry everything at once. However, it can be better to split your cargo into multiple loads and ferry each load separately, but only if you're able to keep the masses of the stacks low enough to get multiple fuel steps from each aqua. So you have to make sure that you're not just making super massive structures. The order of determining net thrust is important because afterburners can reduce wet mass and drop the weight class modifier of the rocket as a result. So, in other words, if we were, say, right here with the wet mass of 8 and we needed 1 more burn, we could use the afterburner, and instead of going to here, which would cause the -1 burn, we actually stay here and we gain 1 more burn. And so that's a gain there. So sometimes you'll use your afterburner if you're really close to the weight class modifier, so you don't get penalized. That's another interesting tip, isn't it? One other thing too is that the fuel at LEO, at the low Earth orbit, can be converted back to aqua at any time as a free action. we're going to call this video right here as a cliffhanger. All right. So we're going to be adjusting some things here, putting some fuel into that rocket over there that's sitting on Leo. And we're going to do that next. And I guarantee you, next one, we are going to be landing on Mars. We're going to be landing on Mars in the next episode. All right. Very nice. That's going to do it for this one. I hope you're enjoying this series. I hope you're enjoying this game, learning some things on the way. I'm having a great time. So we'll see you next time. Have a good one.